And so I decided I had a crush on him. Maybe that was like going into junior year, and I said, you know what? I know how to do this. I'm going to tell him I can't talk to him anymore. Because I'm going to starve the crush, and it'll go away. Out of sight, out of mind, right? So I got on the phone, and I told him, okay, Kenneth, I don't want to talk anymore. We've been cool. But, and this is the second time I tried to get rid of him. Tried to get rid of him freshman year, because I told him, freshman year, you can go your way, I can go my way. We don't have to be tight like we were in high school. And he was like, girl, I don't know what you're talking about. We're going to be friends, right? And so that didn't work. And so this is my second attempt. And he was like, I don't see why we have to do that. I said, well, one day, don't you want to get married to somebody? Well, how are you going to marry them if I'm around? And you talk to me every day. How would you explain that? And he said, well, that's not going to happen. And I said, well, what if vice versa? If I want to marry somebody named Joe or some, random. And he's like, there's no Joe. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And we went back and forth. He's like, I'm positive. And I was like, how do you know this? And he said, Lasandra, I don't see why we can't put a ring on this. I love you. I've been praying about you being my wife for over a year. Wow. He's been writing about this, seeking God about this. And I was like, okay. So we were married 2 years later, right? We got married 2 years later. And this was a big thing because we're coming out of poverty. We're coming out of fathers that were drug addicted, mothers that were single mothers and had to struggle. And so we're trying to live the dream, So we get the house, we got the cars, we're having the kids. We have 4 kids every other year. We had a baby every other year. Got the kids, And my husband had an opportunity to do college counseling at Northwestern University, not college counseling, admissions in Northwestern. Then he moved over to the college side and did college counseling for Urban Prep Charter Academy for Young Men. He was brought in as the founding college counseling director and charged with this big mission of making sure that in 4 years, 100% of these boys graduated and went on to a 4-year college or university. This had not been done for this demographic, not in the United States. But the motto was, we believe. And so he prayed, he worked, he toiled. He worked at night. He worked on Saturdays. We took the kids to church. I sat on the floor of his office with a baby in my carrier and sorted transcripts to make sure everybody's stuff got into the schools on time. We took them to college, or took them to campus if they had no parent to take them. He had students who lived in homeless shelters who had to put their foot against the door so they could finish their homework and nobody would come in on them. So he worked like a dog. And in 4 years, he was right at the brink of about to get everybody in the school, had 3 students left, sat at his desk like, I gotta get 100%. I got 3 guys left who had an IEP, I think that's what it's called. And he was nervous because he was like, I don't know who I'm gonna be able to get to take them. It's getting late in the application season. And he got a phone call from a friend who was in admissions and said, Hutchinson, whoever you got left, I'll take them. And so God was on his side. And so 100% of those boys graduated. The school was recognized by People Magazine, by Times, all over national news. And my husband, led the college counseling piece of that, accomplishing that goal for 6 years straight. Wow. He went on to become a national voice around college counseling, working for the Crystal Ray Network, helping other college counselors across the nation do the same thing for them. He traveled across the nation, basically building college counseling departments at 33 schools, 18 different states. Wow. So in 2015, he started having some shortness of breath. And we went in, he was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy. And a couple of years later, he was doing better. The doctor, the cardiologist, he's a young man. He doesn't have any swelling. He doesn't have this. I think he's getting for recovery. He watches his diet. If he does this, he does that. But his grandmother, who was like everything to him, right? Because he lived with his mother and his grandmother growing up. So this is like his other mother. And he literally used to say this, like, if something happens to my grandma, Lasandra, I don't know. I don't know how I would feel about that. I don't know how I would do that. So his grandmother was diagnosed, I think, with cancer, passed away very quickly. And he got that call, and he just cried like a baby. He was telling me, Lasandra, I feel like a piece of me has died. I don't know how to move on. I don't know how to recover, but the heart, mind you, is already weak. Cardiomyopathy means the pump of the heart is not strong. So we got through the funeral. He sang at the funeral. He was also a singer, so he was a strong singer. He sang at the funeral. He belted those notes like it was beautiful. He honored her. But later that night, he passed out. He died a sudden death.
The same night?
The same night. The same night. He died a sudden death. So, gosh, I'm sorry. It didn't shock me like that. I tell that story often because of Grace and Grief, so I'm used to saying the story. But we had 4 children at that point. 4 children that were 11, 10, 8, and 6 years old. So you can imagine my shock in this moment was like, well, God, this is the husband you gave me. And this is the life that you blessed us to have. And this is my best friend. This is my person, you know. And the closest person to me at that point, because at this point I've been closer to him than I was with my parents, right? Because I spent more time in my intimate life with him than I had with my own parents at that point. So he was really the closest person to me. And a lot of people were calling me and texting me. He was featured on channel ABC7. The Tribune came out, did an article, because people were saying this is a champion in education in the United States. There was a lot of media attention. The funeral was bananas, you know. But people were asking me, well, what are you going to do? And I was thinking to myself, you know, if I'm devastated, but I'm going to do what I've always been doing. Because God is the one who was the source of that life. And so if he's still who he is, he can be the source of a second life.
That's right.
I don't know, I don't want a second life, but I felt like I have to believe that some kind of way, somehow my ladder can be greater than even this past I had.
In your second life.
And that somehow out of this some good can be worked out of what looks just like darkness and devastation and loss. And so I began to document my process about grace and grief. I was talking about this, writing and blogging. Some friends suggested I created a YouTube channel, started YouTubing about it, and a friend of ours from Channel 7 saw it. It was like, we're going to feature this on the news. It started to gain momentum. People started to have me come out and speak about grief, right? And about my process with grief, and how was I recovering, but also what was my mindset around this. And I'll tell you that I really deeply believed in my heart, like, all things work together. Everything. The loss, the setback, the rejection, the devastation, the rug pulled out from up under you. There is no thing that cannot be taken and somehow thrown together and work together for the good. And so I started to speak that out of my mouth everywhere I went, saying, you're going to see me at some point become that woman who lost her husband and literally be amazed and say, wow, look what God has done with this woman. That's right. And so I began to speak that. I began to just try to live that out. I'm still in the process, right? Because we're just 2 years in. I'm still in the process of that. But at this point, Grace and Grief has an annual conference called the Rebirth Conference, where we basically bring in counselors, we bring in speakers, and we teach people what to do with their trauma and how to grow through it and live a bold and powerful life on the other side of it. So I just want to share some of the things that we talk about in Grace and Grief with you today, okay? How do I say this? The first thing is, I'm talking about self-care. Self-care was huge, right? Because the moment somebody put a phone in my hand and was like, call 911, and I realized that it was because of my husband, because I knew about his heart, and I knew his grandmother had died, and like the moment all that came together in my brain, I literally felt pain from the crown of my head to the sole of my feet. Like my whole body was like just so much pain. But I had to get through the funeral. I had to get through all this stuff. So I was just walking around in pain. It probably was like 8 weeks, maybe later, that I broke down and was like, I'm in so much pain, like physical pain, right? And so one of the things that we talk about is you can't heal from trauma decompartmentalizing different aspects of your personhood. The body, the mind, the spirit are one.
Yes.
And so everything that happens in the mind and in the heart and in the soul, your body is also experiencing it. An angry person has an angry body. A fearful person has a fearful body. A sad person, the body is sad with you.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right? And so when I felt like, oh my God, the devastation of trauma, I felt the devastation of trauma all over me. And so I felt weak. I had headaches. I immediately had a holistic reaction. And so one of the things that we talk about with Grace and Grief is, even though you may have an emotional issue, like you're recovering from an abusive relationship, you're recovering from childhood trauma, you're recovering even poverty, discrimination, that's traumatic. All of these things that we go through in our lives, taking natural supplements, seeing a doctor, a physical doctor, having your blood work done at least once a year or twice a year, making sure your vitamin D and your iron is up. These things affect the mood.
Yes.
These things affect like your ability to process what happened to you.
Yes.
Drinking water, going for a walk. You cannot heal from trauma without caring for the body.
Yes.
And so that has been a major part of my walk. And so Grace and Grief, we have an online community on Instagram. I talk about emotions, I talk about spiritual things, but I always talk about health.
Yes.
I always talk about self-care. I always talk about okay, I'm trying this new facial scrub, or I'm exfoliating my skin, because this is a part of my process and my healing process. So we want to make that point that it's holistic. Healing from trauma is holistic. Another thing, and Carla touched on this, is the stigma. It was two sides of me. I felt two different ways. My husband passed away, and people were like reaching out, they were empathetic.
Yeah.
And a part of me felt like, well, thanks so much, I'm devastated. But another part of me felt like, I'm still a thug, though. Don't get it twisted. This is good. I can weather any storm. Is this my first traumatic experience? No. So a part of me, because you know what I mean? You've been hit. This is not the first thing.
Right.
My father did in the abandoned building on 57th in Indiana. They found him 30 days later. I've been hit. I've been through things. This is not the first thing. So part of me felt like, yes, thank you so much. Another part of me felt like, yeah, but I'm still a gangster though. So
you didn't cry. You wasn't crying like a victim or like a
I didn't want to be looked at like,
you didn't want to be
don't
looked
pity
at.
me.
Yeah.
That was what I said on the first YouTube video. I said, don't pity me. I'm not pitiful.
Yeah.
What you gonna do?
Right.
Take what I got left and work it. Play the cards that I was dealt. That's what I always do. You know what I mean? That's who I am. Don't get it twisted. So it was this duality of emotion that I had. But because I tell you, sometimes if I can't get anybody, my husband mowed the lawn, my husband fixed the stuff, my husband cared for the house, he did everything. I just had to be like, honey, I want some money, I want to go here.
Right.
I was well taken care of. So to not have him around and who's gonna cut the grass?
Yeah.
My fool stuff I'm gonna cut the grass. I don't know do anything, So I get out there and then I'm sore for a week and I'm like, I'll never cut the grass again. I don't know how to really wash the car. I did this yesterday. I was like, I can't wash the car because the rear mirror is cracked and it keeps getting worse when I go through the tunnel. Forget it. I'm gonna mop the car. I'm gonna mop the car. The squeegee mop. I'm gonna fucking apply the car. Right. That's exactly. I got it. So that's this other part of me, right? And that's very real, right? But sometimes, especially in our community, especially in the Black and Brown community, we have been through so much, and we are so taught, like strong Black woman, that I think the stigma is not so much on mental health. The stigma is on vulnerability.
Right.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
It's almost like, how dare you, if you're supposed to be strong, now try to turn around and be vulnerable.
Yep. Yep.
And so what I try to do with the Grace and Grief brand is really promote the duality
Yes.
of I have vulnerability, and I'm a gangster.
That's right.
And I can be both. I can be both at the same time.
Yes.
I can embody all of that. I am strong. I do believe. I do have faith. I will stand through the storm. I'm also crushed and hurt, and I miss my husband.
Yes.
And I feel both of that at the same time. There's a song I love. One of the lyrics says, I stood tall and I crumbled at the same time.
At the same time, yes.
And that's reality.
Yes.
That's transparency. That's the truth of who we are in our humanity. And so when you talk about just the importance of self-care, we have to remove that barrier that says almost like, because you have to admit you need some care.
That's right.
To invest your money and your time in the self-care.
Yeah.
First, you gotta come into the realization, I need some care. Then you gotta let other people know, I'm not coming to do that for you because I need some care for me.
That's right.
And you have to have the courage and the boundaries to follow through on what you need for you.
Yes.
And so I think it's really a paradigm shift in how we view ourselves. And so that's something I strive to do, and many people commented to me and said, you do this well. Like, you always show up strong, but you're never hiding and trying to say it doesn't bother you.
That's right.
You give us both. And I think that's a realistic and transparent journey.
Yes.
And so I think giving yourself permission to just be all of that.
I love it.
I'm feminine, I'm soft, I'm emotional, I can be vulnerable.
But you're a gangster.
I'm also a gangster.
gangster.
You're a gangster.
You took it right out of
I get it done, okay? It's gonna be done. Thank you, right? So all of that is both. I'm all of that, and I think that there is the conversation of that needs to be had. First for ourselves, then in our community, then even on a broader landscape. This is a book talking about therapy, the going to counseling, going to therapy. I immediately was going to counseling. As soon as my husband passed away, I was like, find me a counselor. For my kids, I have 4 kids, and myself. Because I do not believe in, we're just gonna wing it.
Right.
Here we go, we're gonna just sweep it under the carpet, everything is fine. That's not true, or just over spiritualize it. We do a disservice sometimes even in the church because we don't put enough emphasis on mental health professionals.
Yes.
Yes, we love the Lord, and He is a wonderful counselor. He has also anointed human beings to counsel.
Right.
Come on. People that are specialists, people that have training, people that have studied the brain and psychology and development. He have anointed people to understand that, just like He anointed Daniel, just like He anointed Joseph to be a public policy specialist. He anoints people with specific knowledge. And so it's okay to access that. So putting, when we're thinking about ourselves, but also in our communities, just allowing people to understand and to feel at peace with accessing mental health services is really important and paramount. This is a book, one of my counselors, this was the first thing she told me to buy this book. This is a great book. It's a little dense, but the information is really powerful, and it's called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Let me read you something. I'm sorry, The Body Keeps the Score. Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma. Bessel van der Kolk. So I wanted to read you guys a quote from this book, because this is really powerful to me. He says, agency is owning your life. He says, agency is the technical term for the feeling of being in charge of your life. knowing where you stand, knowing that you have a say in what happens to you, knowing that you have some ability to shape your circumstances. And how many of you know that oftentimes trauma strips us of these emotions?
Yes.
Trauma completely makes you feel disempowered and that you don't have any control, okay? So having a sense of agency. He says people that have gone through a lot of trauma tend to end up feeling more out of control, and many of them were once confident are now trapped in a cycle between frantic activity and immobility. He says knowing what we feel is the first step to knowing why we feel that way. If we are aware of the constant changes in our inner and outer environment, we can mobilize to manage them. And so what he's advocating for is a slowing down process. I'm going to interweave some things that I have practiced in self-care, what we teach in Grace and Grief, just as I'm talking in a narrative way. So he's saying, slow down and think about, just like in my example, how does your body feel? Not just that you're angry, but is your chest tight? Do you have a shortness of breath? Do you feel panicky? Do you have backache? Where is the pain? Is the stress drawn to the lower back? Is the stress drawn to the shoulders, the neck? And he's saying, he advocates that people slow down and breathe and try to pinpoint not just what they're feeling, but how they feel in the body. He's saying you cannot heal from trauma without beginning to be in touch with that connection.
Wow.
Because what happens is we've lost touch with it. We've lost touch with our relationship with ourselves. Trauma causes you to disconnect from you because you're going into survival mode. You're going into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And when you're living in a state of fight, flight, or freeze, you can't discern the bad or the good.
Wow.
So then this impacts your decision making. This impacts your relationships. This impacts, are you going to take the job or not? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's not a good idea, right? We're panicky sometimes because of childhood trauma. You don't know why you're panicky, or you've been hit with so many losses, you don't believe good things are going to happen for you, so you don't even want to try. You sabotage it. So trauma has so many impacts on the life. So he talks about slowing down, being in touch with your body, and making the connection between what you're thinking and feeling and how you're feeling in the body. Okay. This point too, he says, many patients have survived trauma through tremendous courage and persistence, only to get in the same kinds of trouble over and over again. Trauma has shut down their inner compass and robbed them of the imagination they need to create something better. In studying grief, one of my favorite research is around post-traumatic growth. Anybody looked at that concept? Post-traumatic growth is studied by scientists and psychologists, and it basically is proven that people that have experienced trauma have the potentiality to grow far beyond their own intellectual, emotional, physical state than their counterparts. Like their original, whatever the original version of them was, they have the potentiality to supersede it in tremendous ways and become a more robust, stronger, deeper person because of the trauma than someone who hadn't experienced the trauma. This is called post-traumatic growth, and this is proven. This has been looked at and researched, and experts say that this is a possibility. But the results really rest on then what we do with the trauma. Because if we don't be proactive and process it, we're not going to have post-traumatic growth, right? We're going to be stuck. And so his point really sticks out to me because a lot of times he's saying we know how to just press through and just be persistent through grit. But he's saying even the imagination is impaired in how to have a better life. And one of the things I talk about in Grace and Grief is I don't want to just survive, I want to thrive. I don't want to just survive it, I want to thrive.
Yes.
I want to experience post-traumatic growth. I want to become a deeper more robust, stronger, steadier, more potent version of who I am than I was before experiencing the trauma. And that is possible. If I take my trauma and I deal with it, if I take my trauma and I go ahead and I employ my self-care principles, I'll talk about some specifics too before I end. If I take the time to be honest and transparent about how I really feel. I tell people this at church all the time, grief makes you mad at God. Thank you for saying that. You're like, I don't want to have nothing to do with no God. Where's God when my so-and-so died, right? Be real with God. I tell people all the time, God is not afraid of your anger. You know? You think he's back? Is he backed in the corner, intimidated by you?
That makes a lot of sense.
He's waiting on you to have that conversation with him.
Yes.
Because he knows you
I was
can't
so
heal and thrive
angry.
on the other side of loss without the conversation.
That's right.
True.
Come on with it.
Say.
You know, so I think like that's important, just raw honesty and transparency. And I fought to have that duality. I was telling my mother, I'm not going to let anybody turn me into the Incredible Hulk. Yes, I'm strong. I'm also hurt.
Right.
Y'all not going to turn me into the Incredible Hulk. So I'm going to own my process and take the time I need and my self-care to work this out so that I can really heal and grow through grief. Some practical things.